Overthinking Isn't Insight by Jameson Cobbs, founder of Tough Love Counselling. Overthinking isn't insight. It feels like insight. It feels responsible. It feels like you're being careful. But most of the time, it's something else. And if you don't understand the difference, you can spend years mistaking mental activity for progress. People often describe themselves as overthinkers with a strange mix of pride and frustration. I just think deeply. I analyze everything. I don't act without considering all sides. On the surface, that sounds intelligent, and sometimes it is. But here's the distinction. Insight moves you forward. Overthinking keeps you suspended. Real insight simplifies. Overthinking multiplies variables. If your thinking leads to a decision, it's insight. If it leads to more thinking, it's probably avoidance. Overthinking feels productive because your brain is busy. Busy, however, is not the same as effective. There's a reason this happens. Your nervous system does not like uncertainty. When something matters, a relationship decision, a career move, a confrontation you've been postponing, uncertainty feels threatening. So your brain responds the way it knows how. It thinks harder. If I consider every angle, if I anticipate every outcome, if I rehearse this conversation enough, the mistake is believing that uncertainty can be solved by thinking more. It can't. Uncertainty isn't solved, it's tolerated. And tolerance requires action. Overthinking is often avoidance dressed up as responsibility. You're not procrastinating in an obvious way. You're circling. You're gathering perspectives, replaying conversations, imagining outcomes. And because it looks sophisticated, it's harder to confront. But circling is still circling. High-functioning people struggle with this the most because thinking is their strength. So when stress increases, they double down on cognition, more analysis, more self-reflection, more mental simulations. But simulation never replaces experience. You can rehearse a boundary in your head 50 times. It will not build the same confidence as saying it once. And eventually, the mental rehearsal becomes exhausting. Another diagnostic distinction. Insight reduces noise. Overthinking increases it. If you walk away clearer than when you started, you likely gained insight. If you walk away more tangled, more tense, and more uncertain, you were ruminating. Rumination does not build clarity, it builds anxiety. In therapy, this shows up constantly. Someone has exceptional awareness. They can explain their attachment patterns. They understand their childhood conditioning. They know why they react the way they do. And yet, nothing changes. Because insight without action becomes intellectual self-soothing. It creates the illusion of progress without the vulnerability of movement. And movement is what your nervous system resists. There is no risk-free version of meaningful action. There's only informed action. And informed does not mean perfect. It means sufficient. Clarity is not something you arrive at through endless thought. It is something you build through structured decisions, small decisions, measured decisions, decisions that generate new information. Real-world feedback is more valuable than mental rehearsal, always. There is also a control illusion embedded in overthinking. If I anticipate everything, I won't be blindsided. If I imagine every scenario, I'll stay safe. But life doesn't reward over-preparation with immunity. At some point, you must tolerate incomplete information. That tolerance, not endless analysis, is maturity. If you identify as an overthinker, the goal is to not stop thinking. That's unrealistic. The goal is to recognize when thinking stops serving you. Ask yourself, is this leading to clarity or is it protecting me from discomfort? That question alone can interrupt the cycle. Here's a practical shift. Instead of asking, have I thought about this enough? Ask, what small action would give me new data? Send the email. Have the conversation. Set the boundary. Apply for the position. Not recklessly, not impulsively, deliberately. Clarity follows movement, not the other way around. Overthinking is often a self-trust issue. If you trusted yourself to handle outcomes, you wouldn't need to simulate them endlessly. You would move, adjust, and adapt. But when self-trust is fragile, the mind compensates with control, and control feels safer than vulnerability. The irony? The longer you delay action in pursuit of certainty, the more anxious you become. Your nervous system interprets delay as threat. If we haven't acted yet, it must not be safe. So it thinks harder. And the loop tightens. Breaking that loop doesn't require radical change. It requires structure. Define what good enough information looks like. Set a decision deadline. Limit how long you revisit the same question. Then act within that boundary. That's discipline. Not impulsivity, not recklessness. Discipline. In my work, this is often the turning point. Helping someone see that their intelligence isn't the problem, their avoidance is. Depth becomes powerful only when paired with movement. Otherwise, it becomes paralysis with better vocabulary. So if you recognize yourself in this pattern, the takeaway is simple. Notice when thinking shifts from clarifying to stalling. Notice when you're circling instead of deciding. And choose one structured action that moves you forward. You will gain more clarity from one measured step than from another week of mental debate. Overthinking isn't insight. Insight simplifies. Overthinking complicates. And if you learn to tolerate uncertainty instead of trying to eliminate it, your thinking becomes sharper, not louder. If this perspective resonates, I occasionally publish and record pieces like this. You're welcome to follow along or reach out if and when it feels relevant. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in blog number 3.